Welcome back on this Friday afternoon. Our next and final speaker today will be Beth Carroll Horrocks, who, in addition to the collection of rulers which she will be discussing today, has an almost complete set of the original series of the State Bell postcards and a collection of over 200 pincushion postcards. Beth, take it away.
Thank you, Dick. So let me go ahead and start my slideshow. How's that? Okay.
We're not seeing your screen, Beth.
Hang on just a second. How's that?
It's not the right screen. It's the Zoom screen. You need to select your PowerPoint.
I did, yeah.
There it is.
Okay. Does it look all right?
And then just put it in the presentation format.
I had this all set yesterday. You're not able to do that, right, Mary Beth?
No, if you click the fourth icon in the bottom right.
Yeah, I don't have any icons on the bottom. Sorry about this, guys. How's that?
There you go.
Okay,
That's
sorry
good.
about that. All right, well, apologize for that slight delay. So many thanks to the Ephemera Society of America, one of my all-time favorite organizations, for the invitation to share my ruler collection with you all today. So my life motto is, it's all connected. And after meeting Paul Erickson through Zoom this week, and after doing all of the research for my notes for today's presentation, I can assure you that it is all connected. So here is the plan for today. Looks like a lot of words, but I promise you it will go fairly quickly. Like Paul did, I'm going to introduce you to myself as the collector, and I'll say right now that I'm speaking here as a private collector and not as a representative of the Ephemera Society or of any particular organization that I'm affiliated with. I'll talk to you about my very first ruler. I'll talk to you about where I get new rulers, how I document my collection, how I store them, a little bit about the collection as a whole, my collection policy and how it's evolved over the years. And then I'm going to show you examples from very selected categories from within my ruler collection. If I showed you everything, we would be here for 3 days, and I know it's a Friday afternoon in the summer, so we're not going to take 3 days. So here is the very first ruler in my collection. It's also pasted on the screen my very first blog post about my collection. So in 1987, I was working as the manuscripts librarian, head of the manuscripts department in Philadelphia at the American Philosophical Society. And my colleague there, David Reese, who is a historian of science, traveled to the History of Science Society meeting in North Carolina. And while he was there, they visited a gift shop, a museum gift shop. And he remembered that I had on my desk a utensil jar full of rulers for our researchers to use. So he bought me this dinosaur ruler and brought it back to Philadelphia and gave it to me as a souvenir, as a gift from his trip to North Carolina. The next day, a researcher who had been working in our reading room and who had witnessed this gift left. When she left, she gave me her ruler, a ruler she brought with her to do her own research. So we always say in the ephemera world and the collecting world that when you have more than one of anything, you have a collection. So that's the official start of my ruler collection. And I'll be telling you more shortly about how it grew and what it looks like now. But that's the official start. So again, to go over the background, and like with Paul, I think that everything in my background, including family life and education and work history, is reflected in my ruler collection. I'm going to try to make that clear. So I'm the oldest of 5 children. We're very lucky that we're all still alive and well. And as far as I know, only one of my brothers is a real collector, and he did collect something I have absolutely no interest in. So our interests vary greatly. We grew up in Guilford, Connecticut, and 2 of the rulers you can see on the right side of the screen are made from ephemeral objects that I turned into my own ephemera. So there's scans of postcards of Guilford, and I made them into ruler bookmarks. The one in the middle is a plastic ruler that was issued by the Guilford Democratic Town Committee, of which our father, Robert Carroll, was treasurer for many, many years. So this is the first example you'll see also of a ruler joke, in that it says right on it, "We measure up." You'll see this frequently during my talk. I went to college in Massachusetts, and then got 2 master's degrees in Washington, D.C., one in library science and one in American history. And then have worked at 4 different special collections, libraries, and archives since then. First being in Philadelphia, and I'm now at the State Library of Massachusetts. The rulers that you can see on the left are rulers I recently made just for this talk. And when we get to the end of the presentation, I'll show you a lot more of my new homemade ephemeral rulers. I'm also a quilter, and as you can imagine, quilters have loads of rulers. It's a very important tool in our work. And this one also, the picture on the left also has a ruler joke. Give a quilter an inch and she'll think she's a ruler. I have a lot of examples of this particular joke. I also print images on fabric and make them into quilts of all different sizes. And many of the things that I print are ephemeral objects. The 3 you can see at the top of the screen are made from postcards. Again, scanned and printed onto fabric. And then I also make family-related quilts that are made from photographs and ephemeral items, again, printed on fabric and sewn into quilts. And here are some examples of ruler-themed fabric that I've made into various things. The 2 boxes, fabric boxes on the right, are made from 1¼ inch strips of ephemera-themed fabric. So see, it is all connected. I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts with my husband, Tom, who is a historian and a collector of Lincolniana. So we have 2 sample rulers, recently made rulers featuring Lincoln's image. And then at the bottom right is a blotter from 1930 that's promoting 2 films that came out that year, one of which is about Abraham Lincoln. So again, it's all connected. We live with our cat, Libby, who is the ruler of the house. And as you can see from these pictures, Libby is very interested in measuring and not so much interested in Abraham Lincoln. I also use purchased images of black and white cats on new rulers, and you'll see some more. No, this is the only sample of that. So Dick mentioned that I collect 2 other kinds of ephemera besides rulers. These are 3 from the Tuck State Bell postcard series, which was issued in the 19-teens in a set of 45 cards. Not every single current state was a state then. And I've shown you here the 3 states that are most important to my life: Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. And the Massachusetts one is by far my favorite. Shows a woman in her cap and gown. There's only 1 card missing from my collection, and that is Nevada. I have no idea why it's so scarce, but I can't find one anywhere. Besides Tuck State Bell cards, I also collect pincushion postcards. I currently have about 215 of those, some of which I think are probably not exactly pincushion postcards, but maybe meant to take a dab of scent. And they all are two-layer postcards with a fabric covered cushion somewhere on them. I just love them. You can see that there's also a sense of humor involved in this collecting. The card on the far right says, please bear in mind, this is a pincushion. So sources for acquiring new old rulers. I do a fair amount of online shopping at places like eBay and Etsy and Hip Postcard. The ones from Hip Postcard are mostly fish related. You'll see a sample of that shortly. I also shop mostly New England area rare book, paper, and ephemera shows, especially the Ephemera Societies of America's ephemera show, whether it's virtual or in person. And I also have very generous friends and family who know that I collect rulers and keep their eyes open for them. And I will say that at most ephemera fairs that I attend, people will say to me, oh, it's the ruler lady, which I don't really love, but it works. And then they go on to say, I think I have something for you. And that works really well for me. So the longer you do this, the better off you are at making connections who can find new things for you. And then I consider myself a completist in rulers from two different companies, starting with Rich Frog in Burlington, Vermont. They used to issue their wooden rulers with paper heads attached to the tops of the rulers. They now print the heads of a selected person from each list right on the ruler. And I wrote to them probably 10 years ago and told them about my collection, how I was collecting every one of their rulers of the world rulers. And they went ahead and sent me a display box. It's normally used in stationery stores. So as far as I know, I have one of every ruler that they've ever issued. And they do keep up with changes in American government and issue a new one every time there's a new president. The other thing I hope I'm complete in are rulers / bookmarks from Night Owl Paper Goods. I think their rulers are beautiful, and I especially like the ones about books and reading. Of course, as a librarian, that's especially interesting to me. So documenting the collection. I do not have a database. I have thought about making a database many times, but I'm a little bit database phobic. So what I do now is create paper, what we call in the library world, accession slips. So they're printed, I create them in Word as a Word document, 4 to a sheet, cut them up and fill them out. And on the occasions when I get a lot of new rulers from a single person, from a single source, I'll make a template so I don't have to write out the same information over and over. So these accession slips, which are filed with the paper rulers, contain a brief description, how I got the ruler, from where I got the ruler. There's a space for notes, especially if I do a blog post about it, how much I paid, if I did pay for it, and the date it came into my collection. So it's really basic accession information. And so you can see what I meant about how my library background affects my ruler collection. So this is an example of a filled out accession slip for a fairly recent acquisition, a Valentine that I just love. I don't really know what those numbers are on the measuring tape. It could be years without the one, I'm just not sure, but I really love this ruler themed Valentine. So I'll be telling you mostly about my paper rulers in a minute, but before I started limiting my collection to just paper, I collected wooden and plastic and metal rulers of all different sorts. So they're mostly stored in utensil jars all over our house, and also in a tool cabinet that I bought at an antique show about 15 years ago. And those drawers, it's a 56 drawer storage cabinet, those drawers are full of rulers. Paper rulers, what I collect now, are stored in plastic boxes and archival sleeves that I acquire from a number of different sources. And if anybody is interested in hearing about where I get those archival sleeves or the boxes, My email address will be posted at the end of this presentation, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions. So the boxes that you see on the right side of the screen, that's the entire paper ruler collection. And each of those boxes has anywhere from 60 to 200 rulers in it. So here's a quick collection overview. So I've been saying that I have about 18,000 rulers. It's an estimate because I don't have a database or a spreadsheet, because all of my information is on those accession slips. I don't really know. And that number is based on an account I did about 10 years ago that was fairly accurate, and I know about how many I get every week. So again, it's an estimate, and I won't know exactly until I build that database. Materials in the collection cover a great variety. There's mostly paper now and cardboard, but there's also wood and plastic and metal. And you'll see in a minute all of the, no, not all, but a selection of the formats that my rulers come in. There are all sorts of things, including flashcards and fly swatters and cutting boards. So there's a very long list here, and since the talk will be recorded, if you're interested, you can go back and read this whole screen again. The collection policy started out very broad. It was, I acquired any ruler I could. Starting in 2001, I drafted a very simple collection policy, and as a library professional, I do understand how important collection policies are. I made it more formal in 2005 when I was taking a class at the Harvard Extension School in their Museum Studies certificate program, and we had to write a collection policy for that class. And then in 2012, I realized that I had too many rulers and that I couldn't keep collecting wood and plastic and metal rulers. So that's the year, so it's almost 10 years now, that I decided to start restricting the collection to paper. The most recent version was 2019, where I restricted it slightly more and talked about what kinds of paper I would collect. And right now, the collection of paper includes things like Valentines and bookmarks and labels and trade cards, and I'm going to be showing you some samples of those. So people ask me all the time why I collect rulers. And I discovered when I was getting ready for this talk that that's what my colleagues on our organizational committee really want to know. So I think this is a good time to talk about that. I used to say, I don't know, I just like rulers. And that is still true. I love rulers. But I see now that that's not really a good enough explanation for what we're doing in the Ephemera Society. So the answer is that besides liking stationery products in general, and I do, I like order and I like symmetry and I like consistency. And for rulers, that means that an inch is an inch. It's always an inch, unless it's interpreted artistically, and you'll see some samples of that in a minute. An inch is always the same length, and I really like that. That's partly why I started collecting so-called boring regular rulers. But my collection quickly grew to include so many other formats, so many different shapes and sizes and functions and colors and designs, that it became more and more clear to me that I just love rulers. And I'm not apologizing for that, it's just, that's the way it is. So that need for order and arrangement and description, and it partly also explains my career choice to work in libraries and special collections and archives. It also partially based on a need for consistency in scheduling, in sleep times, in meal times, and carb counting. That's based on my 51 years with type 1 diabetes. So I like order, I need consistency. And rulers have become my thing. They're what I collect, they're what I'm known as, and I really do just love them. So that's my collection policy and why it's going to continue for a while. So I'm going to start showing you examples of things in my collection now, starting with ruler-themed objects. Again, a great variety, starting with that headband, which I don't really wear because it hurts. But there's things like the 1-inch square artistic boxes. There's trays, there's Christmas trees made out of rulers. There's all sorts of things. The ruler bag that's on the left side of your screen was described on eBay as an ethnic yarn bag, whatever that means. And I've shown you a close-up of the ruler part of that. So that's why I have it, because it has a ruler on it. And then on the right side of the screen, you can see a flask, which I have never used as a flask, but I know that I have it and it's available if board meetings or Zoom meetings get too long. Some more ruler-themed objects. There's a sugar bowl, a lot of boxes made out of old rulers, and I think I have about 25 of those boxes now. And then the item on the top left, excuse me, top right, has a really interesting story. So in my own collection, I have one of these boxes. It's made by a company named Horrocks, and let me just get my notes on this. Anyway, Horrocks was known as, let's see, the king of whimsical ceramics in the 1950s and 60s. The particular item that you're looking at came as a gift from my future mother-in-law before she died in 1984. And she gave it to me not because I collected rulers, because I wasn't collecting rulers then, but because she knew I liked cats. In May of this year, so May 2021, I saw on eBay one of these items that was described as Holtz Howard Cozy Kitten Tape Measure and Pin Trinket Box for sale on eBay for $369.99. I don't know if it's sold, but that's how much it was listed for. So people ask me sometimes how much my collection is worth. I have absolutely no idea. That's one little clue. Okay, back to this. This is the door to our 3rd floor room where Tom and I both store our collections. You'll see a burlap growth chart in the image on the left that's I've had printed with Beth's ruler collection in case there's any question at all about what's in that room. And then I have a heart because I do love old rulers. I also collect edible rulers. So this is the extent of that part of my collection. There's chocolate rulers and there's bubblegum rulers. They're probably hard as rocks right now. The packaging is printed with rulers, and then the insides, which I've seen in other examples, are printed with rulers as well. And the yellow box from Lint is empty. I have no idea why they printed a ruler on one of their boxes. But it's in my collection. It's made of paper, has a ruler on it. It fits the collection policy. I also have some ruler-themed art. 2 of the items on this page came as gifts from conservators in the various libraries I've worked in. And then there are 2 very recent postcards that I bought on Etsy from a more modern photographer. There's some more samples of art. The marbled paper rulers are made by an Etsy dealer who's become a friend recently, and I think they're just beautiful. The one on the left with the book on the top was a custom order that he did for me. And then the standard Jupiter Lars ruler. It's really hard to explain. It's a sticker, but I have the corresponding wooden ruler. I bought it in 2011. And if you do a Google search for that phrase, standard Jupiter Lars, you'll find a YouTube video that, in theory, describes what the ruler is. And basically it says that you line up the horse on the ruler with the object that you're measuring. There's no horse on not that I can see. Horse on that ruler. So when I said that, when I said that I was going to be showing you some rulers that are artistically interpreted, that's one example. It's one of my favorites. I also have a subsection within the collection called Beth's Ruler Collection, and these are rulers that I've bought mostly from Etsy that have the name of my collection on it. I also used to collect rulers with just the name Elizabeth or Beth on them, and used to be, you could go into a gift shop or a stationery store and find a whole rack of rulers with names on them. I haven't seen that in over 10 years, but I have a bunch of rulers with my name on it. And then 3 examples from that grouping. There is an etched glass ruler. There's a custom-made wooden ruler, and then the bottom one is made from found wood, and all of these came from dealers on Etsy. So filing categories. I told you I'm a librarian. These are the categories that I have all of my paper rulers filed in those boxes that you saw a few minutes ago. Since most of them, the vast majority of them are advertising rulers, it's fairly easy to group them into filing categories. And what I'm going to show you next are the examples in my collection from the categories that are marked in red. So they're stored, again, in these plastic boxes. The boxes with the blue stars on them are all greeting cards. So greeting cards is by far, ruler-themed greeting cards is by far the highest, has the highest percentage of boxes in the collection. And the greeting cards come in several categories, and I'll show you some examples now. First, Valentines. They are for the most part from the 1950s, 60s, 70s, but there are also some very recent ones. The one on the far right of your screen is one that I bought this year from, again, from Etsy, but it's a clearly just made. And then these are 2 of my favorite Valentines. The one on the right, the bear ruler, is a blotter, and it has a bunch of ruler jokes on it. I can't bear it. And then it's against the rule, measuring my affection. And I hope it becomes very clear that most of the rulers in my collection just amuse me greatly. I just love them. More samples. The ruler on the left, the card on the left, excuse me, has a real wooden ruler attached to it. And then in the center, there's a measuring tape, and there are many, many measuring tape images on the Valentine rulers. One on the right is what's called a ruler holder. And all of the ruler holders in my collection are for Valentines. They're made of paper, and they have 2 slots in them that you slip a ruler into to give to your loved one for Valentine's Day. The next category is Father's Day cards. And when Paul and I both talk about how much you can learn from ephemera, I will tell you that there are a lot more Father's Day cards in my collection than there are Mother's Day cards. So right now I have 120 different Father's Day cards. You'll see some samples here. Again, the duck one is one of my favorite Father's Day cards. It has a tiny yellow plastic ruler attached to it, but you can see the general theme. And then this one is signed Jimmy. I don't know if Jimmy signed that himself or his mother did, but one of the things that I really love about the Valentines in my collection is that almost all of them all the older ones are signed. Fair amount of gift cards in the Father's Day section. And then I really wanted to tell you about this theme that's come up recently, I'd say over the past 5 years, and that is the measuring tape as the illustration on a Father's Day card. So let me just see this number here. Of my 120 different ruler themed Father's Day cards, 53 of them, so over half, have images of this tape measure, and they're all different. There's 53 different tape measure cards, but if you do an Etsy search, you can find hundreds and hundreds of them. So I don't know if people copy from each other or if it's just an idea that people really like, but there are a lot of tape measure Father's Day cards you can buy. Mother's Day, these are some samples. One is for grandmother, but I keep that in my Mother's Day category. And then the butter one technically isn't a ruler, though it is linear measurement. And it has a nice ruler joke on it too. So you can see there's a great variety within the collection. And then a few more greeting card categories, holidays. There's Easter and then a Christmas bookmark. Very different in age. Have 2 boxes in the greeting card section of rulers that say you rule. And the current count for blank you rule cards is 97. And then for special occasions, I have about 16. And then there's a big subcategory of you rule cards for teachers. And I have 33 different ones in that category. All right, we'll move on to food and beverage. They come in a great variety of formats, including folding bookmarks, blotters, and advertisements taken out of magazines. So again, here's a quick sample of food and beverage themes. A few more. I really love the one on the top left, the design of it. It has a 1959 calendar on it. Then the Swift company made great use of those cards that you can see on the right. And this one is dated 1918, gives you a sense of the date. This one, it was meant for retailers, not for individual consumers. It's a 12-inch folding paper ruler, and it was meant to get retailers, grocery stores probably, to stock Turkey's margarine. Unions also a big category. And I think I have 2 slides for unions. This one, many of them have the logo of the NRA, not the National Rifle Association, but the National Recovery Administration, which was a 1933 agency set up by Franklin Roosevelt to eliminate cutthroat competition by bringing industry, labor, and government together to create codes of fair practice and to set prices. So these are all warning people not to buy any bread that doesn't have a union label on it, and they all have rulers, of course. Smoky Bear is another big category in my collection. Did count them this morning. I have about 70 different Smoky Bear paper rulers, and then about half as many wood and plastic smoky rulers. And they're all about preventing forest fires, which is a good message for right now. And the plastic and wood ones sit in a box that is also part of my collection, the Acme School and Office rulers. I don't remember where that came from. But there's some more smoky bookmarks. Full of good advice. They were issued by the US Department of Agriculture and also state forest agencies. Fishing and fish measurement is another big category within my collection. So as you might imagine, paper and fishing don't go well together. So a lot of the rulers are things that you stick on the side of your boat or made of material that can withstand water, but I wanted to show you some paper ones. So the collection includes fish hook holders because they're frequently printed rulers. And then there's a lot of fishing ruler jokes. So you probably know that the rulers can be marked with false units of measure so that when you measure your fish, it looks a lot bigger than it really is. And then there's also some very practical fishing rulers in the collection, and those I try to keep in their original packaging. There's some samples of fish ornaments, including one from Boston and one from Alaska. They're clearly not meant to do anything useful besides decorate your Christmas tree, I guess. And then a few more ruler jokes. I mentioned earlier that the rulers themed things I find on Hip Postcard are mostly fish joke ruler or fish measurement rulers, including a lot of dead fish with measuring instruments pictured with them. And then the one on the top right is for a dollhouse. Political campaigns and government figures is another big category. Many of these are made of paper, though not all. They also come in plastic and wood and metal. So I'm just going to show you some paper ones today. They also frequently have ruler jokes on them, and you'll see that in just a second. But one of my favorite rulers in this part of the collection is the Barack Obama ruler. This one is a take on the Topps basketball rulers that normally would show a basketball player to show how tall he was, but this one is made specially for Barack Obama. Great variety within this category. There's a few more examples. Again, you can see the ruler joke, a good rule, and then so-and-so can measure up to the job. And then there's a plastic one from my current state, when Michael Dukakis was governor. Not sure which of his terms that was. And then I wanted to show you this category because part of the fun of this collection is doing the research to figure out what the campaign was for and when it was for and where it was being held. So the one on the top right, the Vote Straight, the PEP party, I had no idea what the PEP party was. So my husband Tom helped do some research on that, and we figured out what it is. I had no idea, and there was also a location clue in that. It does say Hinsdale Hospital, so we didn't have to start from scratch. But the research behind the rulers is a lot of the fun of the collecting. Here's some you've probably seen before. We Like Ike has 2 ruler jokes. And then I wanted to show you the Opie Ramsey one because it came with an additional piece of ephemera, a leaflet that describes his qualifications and why you should vote for him. And the Dorothy Sherman ruler is full of information that may not appear on a current promotional ruler, but it's very interesting to see what kind of things she thought was important to put on the ruler that she gave away, including that she was the farm wife of Jacob L. Sherman. A few more politics. There's some plastic ones front and back, and you can see that the top Obama ruler was given out from Budget Card Inc. And then the one on the right will be a familiar image to members of the Ephemera Society. This particular bookmark is of a quality that wouldn't normally fit my collection policy. It's got some damage to it, but I love the image so much, and because it has Ephemera Society connections, I decided to get it. I really like this ruler. I also make my own rulers now, and I was so excited by the positive events in January of this year that I made a bunch of inauguration themed rulers and posed them on the table behind me with action figures of the 2 principal players. Then the last politics ruler, this is a postcard from the mid 1910s, and it's for Governor Andrew Harris of Ohio, who ran on a temperance platform. I didn't have any idea when I bought this what it was talking about. It had a ruler on it, it was ephemera, it was paper, so I bought it. It does, the phrase at the top, "I don't think it will reach you," is printed right on the ruler. It's not written in later. And it's another example of how much fun it is to do the research. So I think I put this either on Facebook or on one of my blog posts asking for help to figure out what the postcard was talking about. And I got a lot of help, including this explanation from my friend, Jim. So people are happy to do the research to help figure out what all these rulers are. Moving on to health and medicine. So I mentioned that I've had type 1 diabetes for 51 years, so this one is one of my favorites. And then this slide shows how rulers are still being used to promote causes. So in 2017, Boston Children's Hospital used it on their letterhead for a particular program. And then the Jaeger's liniment one is much, much older. But everybody knows how rulers work. Here's some more medical themed paper rulers. The one on the right was a giveaway for Dr. D.B. Hand's Remedies for Children, and it's meant to be used as a buttonhole measure. So you can see the front and the back of that one, and then a close-up of what the remedy was. And then I wanted to point out that on the right side in the center is an 1/8 yard measure. I have probably 60 different 1/8 yard measures. These were giveaways meant for sewers. And the heart disease one is 2007. Within health and medicine, I collect ruler blotters made both by mentholatum, which was, look this up. In fact, the company is still in existence. You can still buy mentholatum products. So it's described as a helpful all-around family ointment. And the current website says that they've been in business since 1889. I believe most of mine are from the 20s, 30s, 40s, 1920s, 30s, 40s. They all have rulers on them, which is why they're in my collection. They're made, the mentholatum ointment was made out of both camphor and menthol. And then the other big category within health and medicine are blotters with rulers issued by Walpole's Creoterpin. Words that meant nothing to me until I started collecting these. So it's a combination of creosote and terpene hydrate, which is meant as a cough relief due to colds or influenza. And one of the things they did was issue a series of 6 different bird blotters, and they came blank, so the businesses could have their own business name and address and contact information printed right on them. So because I love my collection so much, I do like to promote it and share it. I have a big set of business cards that I carry the most recent one with me all the time. I also do exhibits. I don't remember when I did that St. Patrick's Day exhibit. It's in a green utensil jar, and it has my Ireland and green colored rulers in it. In 2014, I put on all of my all the ruler clothing and jewelry that I could fit on one time, and sat outside the Massachusetts governor's office. You can see Mitt Romney's portrait in the top left there. And then I also do exhibitions, especially at places like the Ephemera Society. So in 2014, we had a one-day conference on ephemera relating to food and drink, and I did a small exhibit for that. And I'm not sure we're going to be doing that again. I hope we do. It would be at the annual meeting in March if that happens. I also use social media to promote and share my ruler collection. I have a blog and do blog posts. I try to do at least one a week, but sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. Those blog posts feed directly to my Twitter feed, and then I also have a special Facebook page called Beth's Ruler Collection. So I don't think they get a lot of following, but it's a great deal of fun for me to share the collection. And then I've also started to create my own ephemera. So these are all homemade rulers. I bought a series of PNG files through an Etsy dealer. I buy images from Etsy, I find them in other places, and I make my own ruler bookmarks to give away to friends. Many of them are made for specific occasions. The book themed one on the left side of the screen was made for a friend who recently retired at the Library of Company of Philadelphia. And I made a ruler for him with his Library of Congress authority name. And then the bee one on the bottom left was made specifically for World Bee Day. And what I did was I printed on the back information about that international day. A few more quick examples. I also use photographs that I take myself as backgrounds for the homemade rulers. The tulips are from a trip that Tom and I took down to the Boston Common this spring, and it's from a photograph that I took myself. So I have a great deal of fun making these. And the last homemade ruler is not made by me, but by my former boss, Rick Wilson. He was the curator of the Harvard Theater Collection. And when I left that job in 2005, he made me a left-handed archivist rule, model BCH, and the numbers on this ruler go in the opposite direction from what you might expect. And I will also note that today, August 13th, is International Left-Handers Day. All right, we're going to end with my favorites. You've seen already the plastic one that was issued by my father. Because it's issued by my father, it means a great deal to me. The one on the bottom is from my maternal grandmother's sewing basket, and the picture is a little out of focus, but it's a really beautiful ruler, and it's the one that she used for her own sewing project, so that also means a great deal. I like contoured rulers. They're not exact, I guess you could call them die cut. The one on the top left came from a friend who's also, like David, a historian of science. He now lives and teaches in London. And then the Hershey one is a plastic ruler that slips into a paper sleeve that's printed to look like it's torn. It's not actually torn, it's just printed to look like it's torn. So again, my ruler collection amuses me greatly. I do collect rulers from museums and historic sites. So one is from the New Jersey State Aquarium. We lived in Philadelphia. We lived right across the river from that. And then the Gene Autry one was a gift from another work colleague at the American Philosophical Society. Both of those sites have new names now. I have a swatch watch with a ruler theme. And then I really love this Dow Corning ruler because it has examples of 4 different Dow products glued right to the ruler. And then the one on the right is a green, I think it's a penguin. It was a gift from a colleague in Philadelphia who had visited a place called the Big Bookstore in Kuala Lumpur, where I'm sure there are a lot of penguins, but that one also amuses me greatly. Teenager features both a little heart stuck on the end and also a poem by Robert Burns. And then the book cover, I have to admit I haven't read the book, or I don't know anything about the book, but it's made of paper and it has a ruler on it, so it fits right in my collection. I have a lot of rulers shaped like feet. This one was a gift from a researcher in 1991 or 94, and the foot themed rulers tended to be, they're not made so much anymore, but I really like this one because you can see the Twin Towers on the far right image. This is a paper ruler that was a gift from one of my favorite ephemera dealers. It's dated 1901. It's for the John Wanamaker department store in Philadelphia, which was one of the world's first real department stores. And it's meant to look like a wooden folding ruler. You can see that the ink on the end is supposed to look like brass, like it was a wooden folding ruler. And then this is my last slide and my all-time favorite ruler in my collection. It was a gift from my friend Susan in 1992. Susan was a work colleague, again at the APS in Philadelphia. And Sunshine Park was a nudist camp in Mays Landing, New Jersey. It operated from 1938 to 1982. And there's a lot of things that I don't know about this ruler, excuse me, including Who was Uncle Denny? And please note that his name is in quotes. Where did Susan get this ruler? Most importantly, why would anybody need a 6-inch metal ruler at a nudist beach in New Jersey or anywhere else? So I think you can see why it's my favorite. So thank you. And that's the end of my presentation. I am willing to entertain questions from anybody who might want to know about sources or anything else about the collection. And I thank you all for listening this whole time.
Beth, that was quite simply terrific.
Thank you.
I think everybody who has witnessed your presentation would agree that in this area of ephemera, you rule.
I knew you were going to say that.
I know, I'm so predictable. There are a couple of, we're running close to the end of our session today, but there are a couple of interesting questions. One of which is a practical one. In fact, well, we'll save that one for the last one. But this person writes and says, when considering a ruler themed purchase, how do you know for sure that you don't already have that if you don't have a database? And I guess this goes back to, Paul's comment about how do you keep track of these things?
I don't always know. I have a pretty good memory, and if I have time, I will go to my collection and check before I make the purchase. That's the easiest answer, and because I have them so well organized, it's not hard to find out if I already have the ruler. And I really only buy paper ones now, so they're all in one place in our house, and they're organized, so it's not too hard to check.
Okay, fair enough. Oddly enough, I have my collection on my iPhone, but that's a different topic. This is kind of an interesting question. What is your smallest ruler? And do you have any metric or other units of measurement rulers?
Well, I'll answer the second one first. Of course, I have plenty of metric rulers. Many of my rulers have both units of measure printed on them, but yes, I have a lot of metric ones. The smallest ruler is a wooden one. The one that's an actual ruler is a 2-inch wooden ruler that says Beth's Ruler Collection on it.
Okay.
So, and I do have plenty of yardsticks, which I no longer collect, but before
Okay.
I restricted the collection, I had a lot of yardsticks.
So, and here's a question that I guess begins to mine the depths of the philosophical and switches in cultural emphasis. Since rulers were so important in 19th and 20th century culture, as units of measurement, and in cultures where things were built, has that shifted? Has that importance of, or has the importance of a ruler shifted in the 21st century as we move more into a digital world? That is to say, you talked about the tape measures, and that there were a number of 50 some iterations of the tape measure. Has the tape measure replaced the ruler? And, do people really know what tape measures are for anymore?
I'm not sure I can answer that. My sense is that people use rulers much, much less frequently than they used to. I'm not even sure they're taught in schools. I do have some examples of children's workbooks that teach kids how to use rulers, but my sense is that people don't use rulers in general anywhere near as much as they used to. So that's another research topic.
Yeah, I mean, I recently went to a store to buy some of my favorite wooden pencils, the Ticonderoga #2.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked in and a young person waited on me, and I said, I'm having trouble finding these pencils. Do you have any Ticonderoga #2 pencils? And I may have been speaking, I may as well have been speaking in my forebear's native Serbian tongue, because she looked at me as if I were from a different part of the world. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, we may be faced with that. I would love to comment on the Sunshine Park nudist, but I suspect that since this is not the appropriate place, other than to say that when we used to drive to the New Jersey beach, we would pass the Sunshine Park nudist colony, and my children at a very early age learned about nudist colonies. And I guess here's a question. This is kind of interesting. Do you have a repository willing to take your wonderful collection after you depart this world? Or I would add to that, or have you ruled that out?
I expected somebody would ask that, and the answer is I haven't made any decisions yet or actually shopped for possible repository. I'm not sure that the entire collection can go to one place. I may have to break it up. There are all sorts of museums that collect scientific instruments. There's even one in the Midwest that does collect rulers, but it's very small and very focused on one family. So the answer is I don't know yet. I'm not quite ready to depart. And I know that I'm going to have to decide about that and get to work figuring that out fairly soon.
Well,
So I'm happy to have suggestions. My email was on that last slide, and if anyone has suggestions, I'd be happy to hear them.
well, Beth, thank you once again. Sadly, we're at an end for this session, but it has been a very entertaining and very thought-provoking presentation. So thanks from all of us, Beth. And now, Dick, back to you.
Beth, what a fun subject. We thank you very much for your presentation, as well as for all that you do for the society through the course of the year, which is a lot. And folks, in general, we've come to the end of today's presentations. Your Ephemera Society hopes that you have found this to be time well spent. Couple reminders, online over the weekend, beginning at 12 noon Eastern tomorrow, Marvin Getman and his dealers will serve up many, many virtual offerings from almost 100 ephemera dealers for your consideration. Later today at 4:30, which is in 28 minutes, Ephemera Society members only will be granted early admission to the show. For the public, it starts at noon tomorrow. For members, 4:30 today. Non-members who join now between now and 4:30 will also enjoy the early buyer status, and we're set up to take new memberships if there's anybody that wishes to do that. Next March, we've scheduled our annual conference and in-person fair in Greenwich, Connecticut. The conference subject is creating spaces and places about the ways in which humans create their living environments. Ephemera 42 will focus on the design of environments, both interior and exterior, ranging from regional planning and urban design to the creation of parks, to building construction, to social communities, to fine architectural detail. This rich topic encompasses architects, landscape architects, urbanists, builders, anyone and everyone who serves to shape the environment in which we live and play. For those of you who may be interested in presenting, our deadline for response to our call for presentations is October 15th. We certainly hope that you'll join with us in Greenwich. Full information and registration can be found on our website at ephemerasociety.org. From your Ephemera Society and from today's presenters, thank you all for being with us and have a fine day. Goodbye.